Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
Hey guys, Mike and John with Coffee and the Bull. I want to say thank y'all for taking a moment and listening to this episode. Today we're going to be talking about fears of the father. So if you're a mama, time to kick rocks. This isn't for you. It's just going to be discussing some of the things that guys go through, fears that we have, things that we didn't like, when we were growing up that our parents did to us, and and disclaimer right off the bat, kind of in typical Coffee and the Bull fashion, we are not trash talking our parents. We're not throwing any shade their way. We're not saying they did horrible, because our goal is not. We're not saying that the problems you have in life come from issues, trying to get you to hate your dad or anything like that. That's not what our goal is. There's too many people trying to do that.
Unless your dad's a piece of shit.
Yeah, if your dad beat you with a metal rod every day, hey, you probably have an issue right there.
Right.
But this is for your run of the mill, just basic. We grew up. You thought your dad was overbearing, or you didn't like that. Hey, he missed your baseball games because he was working or whatever, and or whatever he didn't hug you enough or something like that. That's not. We're not putting your personal where you're at in your personal life on him. And the reason I want to throw that out there is, we try to, as humans, we try to act with, we want people, when we mess up, we want people to show us mercy, right? But for whatever reason, we don't extend that to our parents at all, and we forget the fact that our parents were no more ready to be a parent when you were born than you were ready to be a parent when your kids were born. My dad didn't get the playbook. He wasn't told, hey, do this, this, and this, and your kid will come up being a success. Go be a doctor, or write some world-changing book or anything like that. He didn't get any of that.
Right.
Instead, what he got was, hey, here's your two kids, because I'm a twin, two kids at one time, ta-da! And we were actually born premature, 2 months premature. So it was a lot sooner than he anticipated. So he was, hey, here's two kids. You ain't never had kids before, but good luck. Try feeding them every now and then. And honestly, you go through, and that was one thing I noticed when my son was born, years back. I want to say about 15, 13 years ago, right around there. Me and my wife were trying to adopt a dog, right? And the Humane Society we were going through to try to get, I think it was a Great Dane or something like that. So I'm so glad it didn't work out. But at the time, I was like, oh, this would be a great dog to have, They wanted, a background. Hey, what dogs have you had before? They wanted references. They wanted, they were going to come view the house, and see where you keeping the dog. When you're gone, where you keeping the dog? What type of ranges? What type of food you going to give? And all this other stuff. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, that was for a dog. For when my son was born, it was, hey, you got a car seat? Good luck.
Right.
And they didn't check nothing else out, And so it was like, you get more preparation to be an animal owner than you do a parent. And somehow we expected our parents to have all the answers, not mess up, not do anything, that was conceived to be wrong. And I think that's unfair to our parents. It was one of the things where, also I know that there are things that I do for my son now that he gets mad about. For example, hey, he wants to play video games or whatever till, whatever hours in the morning. But I also know he's got school. So when I say, hey, it's time to put it up, he gets angry. Not all the time, but sometimes he gets angry and stuff, and he's not getting his way. And what he doesn't realize is I'm looking at it from a macro perspective. I'm looking at, everything all together. He's looking at it from a micro perspective. This is just what I want right now.
Right.
And I think if you really analyze what you got, what a lot of people get mad about their parents at is, you only got part of the picture. Like whenever my parents were growing up, it was, and I heard that all the whole time, when I was a kid. Back when we were growing up,
right,
we didn't go inside till the porch light came on or the street lights come on. Well, I grew up, I was a teenager in like the middle of nowhere, Alabama. They didn't have street lights. So I guess when the lightning bugs come out, is that when I'm supposed to be home? But at the same time, we also have things called technology now And I tried to explain this to my dad, but also I didn't want to get a butt whooping, so I didn't explain it, that well. That hey, when he was a kid, it was, hey, get out of the house, go do this, go do that. What he probably didn't realize is when he was out of the house, that's when Grandpa was talking to Grandma,
Right.
and discussing things that they had going on. If that was his time off work or whatever, she had to take care of stuff at the house. It didn't need her or need him under their feet or whatever. So it's like there's you view things from your own perspective, and it's not till you purposely take and you remove yourself from that and look at it from kind of an overview that you realize that, hey, they were doing the best they could with what they had. I remember I'd get mad at my dad growing up because it was we didn't have, whether it be the new shoes or whatever, the new gaming console, or I think that at the time it was a Sega Genesis. So
Right.
we'll go ahead and age ourselves on that one, kiddos. And I remember that's all. I wanted what all the other kids had, the Super Nintendo or whatever. And I didn't realize that, hey, we were on a budget. I didn't know what a budget was. You had $100, you were good to go. No, that $100 was allocated to go, pay for the mortgage or whatever. And so you don't understand everything as a kid. So that's why I want to stress: we're not throwing shade at our parents. We're not trying to say that, hey, they did a horrible job. But I know that one of my fears is I don't want, if there's things that I don't like that my dad did to me, I don't want my son to be able to look back and say those same things,
Right.
And I honestly think if I'm focusing on one area, he's going to find something to be, he's going to find something to be unhappy about. But it's one of those things where I'm trying to mitigate that as a father. So that's one of the fears I've got is him being disappointed, and would that possibly lead to estrangement? I've got some family members on my wife's side that they don't talk to their she doesn't talk to her mom, or mom doesn't talk to her, and they've been that way for about 10 years now, and I that would break my heart, and so it's like, how do you go about that,
Right. For me, my dad was not the "I'm proud of you, I love you," like that wasn't my dad. It was one of those like unspoken things where you just had to know, based on the fact that he was still coming home and he didn't go get milk and not come back. And so with my kids, like, I go out of my way to tell them I love them, talk to them, hey, I'm here for you, try to be that supporting dad. But like we've talked about, I think that if my dad had been any different, I wouldn't be here today, because his mentality growing up, like, we called him Dr. Grease, because if you ever got hurt, it didn't matter what it was, whether you got a cut, sprained your ankle, whatever, it was, oh, just go under the pickup truck, get you some grease and rub it on there. He doesn't sound like that, but that was his solution to everything. My brother ran me over with a blazer. My whole kneecap is messed up. I got road rash. I ended up having to get basically a plastic filler to fix my kneecap. My dad came in, my kneecap's the size of a volleyball, and he wanted to rub grease in the road rash. And I'm like, no, we'll wait for Mom to get home. She gets home like an hour later, and when I tell you livid, she's like, Bill, did you not see this knee? He goes, I tried to rub some grease on it. She goes, idiot. Put him in the car.
Right.
And like,
now's the time he's got to go to the doctor.
Right. Like, takes me to the hospital. We spend, a couple hours at the hospital. They do all this stuff. I'm in a knee brace for like 3 months. And she was mad. Like, I knew she was mad. And like the whole drive home, she's still fuming because she just worked full day. And now she got to go to the ER. Didn't get to relax. Didn't, nothing. And I remember getting home and my dad, like on the way home, she's basically like letting me know she's going to rip him a new one. We get home, and my dad, well, how's he doing? And she goes, we'll talk later. And that was it. Like, we never saw our parents argue.
Right.
Never saw them fight. If there was ever something that like my dad didn't agree on, it was my mom telling him how it was going to be and my dad saying, yes, dear.
Right.
Their arguments happened in their bedroom, or they'd go out to the car, or they would take a drive somewhere. Granted, we're older, so we could be home alone. Then again, back in the day, there really wasn't like an age on when you could be home alone.
Right.
It was a more of a do you trust your kid not to burn your house down thing. So, and that's kind of a two-part thing for me because I never learned how to have a healthy argument as far as like relationships go. I never learned how to have a healthy argument. If I was upset about a conversation, I just walk away because I'm like, no, I'm angry. And I know I'm gonna say some things that I can't take back if I have this argument because I'm in my emotions.
Right.
I'm hearing to respond out of emotion. I'm not hearing to listen and respond with love. And with my kids, I don't want to argue in front of them because I don't want them to have that negative connotation. But at the same time, I'm depriving them of what a healthy discussion or disagreement looks like.
Right.
And so now I try to have those with them so that when they're arguing amongst each other, because they're siblings, they're going to fight, I try to have that discussion with them to be, hold up, we're going to stop, we're going to talk about this, we're going to figure this out. We're not going to pout, we're not going to whine, we're not going to cry. You're going to tell me what you're doing wrong, you're going to tell me what you're doing wrong, and we're going to figure it out together.
Right.
So they get that healthy communication skill that I never got. And I was always taught, rub some dirt on it, pick yourself up, and move on. Like, you're not going to sit here and dwell and cry and whine and pout about it. And I know we see it a lot. We see it a lot in today's society because nobody wants to do that for their kids. They don't want to teach them that hardened life skill. And that's like, we've talked before about with my son, now's not the time to cry. Now's not the time to whine. Pick yourself up, move on. We can talk about it later. And half the time we realize later, it's not that big a deal. Now, like when I hit my son in the face with the baseball playing catch, in that moment, I was the worst dad in the world.
Right.
He hated me. But we hugged, let him hide his crying in my shirt, and then he went on to play his game. And then later it was, hey, Dad, do you remember that time you hit me in the face with a baseball? I think it was today. I'm like, all right, you got me. That was a good one. But that's my fear for my children is not having a connection to their emotional side and being able to communicate healthy their feelings and I don't want them to be like I am at 39 years old going, my dad's told me I love you maybe a handful of times and I don't think he's ever said he's proud of me. And I've asked for it. Like graduating high school, I was like, hey,
anything you want to say to me, Dad?
Yeah, I was like, I graduated. I was like, you proud of me? And he's like, we'll see if they let you cross the stage. So I crossed the stage, and I was like, hey, you proud of me? He's like, pay rent or get out. I was like, okay, got it.
So I have kind of a little bit of personal, not turmoil, but something that I'm kind of torn in, all right? I remember when I was growing up, my dad... my dad had a rough childhood, his and I'm not going to tell his story, but it was about as bad as you could get in regards to his parents. But one of the fond memories he has with his mom is she really liked scary movies, and so she would wake him up in the middle of the night, and they would watch scary movies together. When the house is dark, it's quiet, all the lights are off, and they would pop some popcorn and go watch a movie. And so even to this day, it's not uncommon for my dad to stay up real late at night and watch movies. And when I was a young kid, I remember we would sneak in there after my mom goes to bed because obviously she was the gatekeeper of fun.
Right.
It was if there had to be somebody who shut something down, it was going to be her. And so we'd wait for her to go to bed, and we'd sneak in the living room with him while he's watching whatever the scary movie of the time was. It could be something like Tales from the Crypt, something cheesy, stupid, but it was still something, and we would sit down there and watch that with him. Well, I think that's part where my dad might have been at the same level of stupid that I am, because not once he didn't see anything wrong with that. My mom would have been like, "Hey, dummy, you're going to give them nightmares," and so obviously we don't need her advice on this topic or whatever. And so I remember.
I love you, Mike's mom.
If you could imagine, the side effect of that was we would have nightmares.
Right, right.
And so it would be, whatever, it could be the Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters or whatever. Like just whatever it was, it would seep into your dreams.
Right.
And and so that's kind of why I don't like I shelter my son from some of that right now. Like I try not to let him watch a bunch of different stuff, or whether it be zombies or whatever, because I don't want him to have those nightmares. But also at the same time, I'm trying to shelter my son's innocence.
Right.
Because right now he's got that where he's playful, he's adorable. He's got just a good heart in his chest and everything. And I'm trying to prolong that being taken from him as long as I possibly can. But I remember when I was, I would have a nightmare and I would get up, and the way the house was laid out is we had 2 bedrooms on one side of the hallway that shared a little alcove for the doors, and then directly across the hallway was the bathroom. And so what my parents would do is all the bedroom lights would be turned off, and they would leave the bathroom light on for a little bit of light, as a night light.
Right.
And I would wake up in the middle of the night. Me and my twin brother shared a bedroom, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night. Obviously, he's not going to protect me from whatever I just had a dream from, because he's also 6 or 7 or whatever age I was. He was and so I would go into the bathroom, and I would just sit there. My dad was a cop at the time, and he was working night shifts. And so I remember he would I might be there 5 minutes, I might be there 5 hours. I don't know. I couldn't read time at the time,
Right.
at that moment of my life. And I would sit there on the toilet, and we never went and woke Mom up, because say what you want, moms, I love moms to death. They don't handle terror the way that dads do.
Right. Right.
I love my mom to death, but she would handle it a whole different way. It's the goal is, and especially in a young kid's mind, if you picked a fight with me and I'm scared, I'm bringing the biggest, baddest dude I can.
Right.
And that's Dad. And so I would sit in the bathroom and I would wait for him to come home. And eventually, obviously, he would come home, and he'd walk by, and he's in his full uniform or whatever, and he would look at me. He's like, "Hey, what happened?" I said, "I had a nightmare," and not once did he go, "Stop being stupid. Go to bed.
Right.
I'm not doing this today. I had a rough day at work." It was never his own issues at the time. It was okay, and he would say, "Give me a minute. I'll be right back." And he would go into his room. He would take off his duty belt. Take his gun off, put it where it goes. Take his duty belt off, take his boots off, and then get out of his bulletproof vest. And he would come back, pick me up, carry me to the bed, and lay down, and he would sleep with us. And I'm in a twin size bed. He's a grown man laying down on a twin size bed with a kid who's got no idea of personal space.
Right.
So it's definitely he's got some back and neck issues now. I'm not taking credit for that. I feel like he's the adult that laid down on a twin size bed.
Right.
But one of the things that I attributed, looking back on that, is when my dad was his most effective was not when he was wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a gun and everything. It was when he was his dad. He was laying down, wrapped his arms around me, and we were good to go, good to get some rest, and whatever obviously I was scared of before, I wasn't scared of now, because I brought the bigger gun to the fight.
Right.
And so I want to fill that role for my son, but I also don't want him having nightmares if I could help it.
Right.
And so it's kind of a wishy-washy thing, and that would be something I would say to a lot of our listeners who aren't military people. They're not cops or first responders or something like that. They don't necessarily have the hey, I'll take life by the horns and take charge and whatever, go in guns blazing. You can still be a successful dad who is
the protector,
an ass kicker for your kids. Where they don't care what you do for a living, because you're still their hero, you're still their protector, and you've got to remind yourself of that sometimes. Because we get so distracted on hey, I'm a loser at work, I'm a loser, driving a piece of crap car, back and forth.
Right.
I don't look like anything amazing. I don't know why my wife's living with me or staying with me or whatever, or my wife left me. I'm just just doing what I can, and you forget that, hey, there's somebody with a set of big eyes that's looking at you for guidance and for comfort, and you just got to remind yourself that you are that person for them, and
Yeah.
you only get to do that for so long.
Because eventually they realize you're not Superman anymore.
Right, right.
And like I remember we always make that joke about holding a flashlight for your dad and stuff like that. And like I remember they used to be a spot that me and my sister would fight for to help my dad, because it was a guarantee on the weekend, whatever day he had off, we had to do something to his truck.
Mm-hmm.
Something was breaking, something needed to be upkept, the maintenance had to be done. I don't know how he kept that truck running for as long as he did. But the goal was to make it to the parts store. Because if you were the only one in the truck with him and you got to the parts store with your dad, you were getting a bag of M&Ms. And like he would tell you, like you're almost home and you're trying to savor every M&M because Dad never.
You better get rid of them.
Oh yeah. You better eat them now, because if we pull up in this driveway and there's any left in that bag, I'm taking them. And he like true to his word, because I would try to savor them suckers until we get, and then I'd get as many in my mouth as I could back when you could buy a bag of M&Ms and it was worth the shit, not what they get now. And he'd reach over and you'd have to hand them to him, and he would just mouth the rest of them, because you didn't want the other kids to be jealous that you got M&Ms. And if you didn't have them, you didn't have proof that he bought the M&Ms.
Right.
And that was the goal for me, was just go get the M&Ms. And it for me with the kids now, because now my son's playing PlayStation and watching TV and everything, and now it's like I'm going to the store, he's like, hey, can you bring something back? And I'm like, nope, that's not the way this works.
Right.
You want something, you get in the truck. And so as a dad, there's things I want to take from my dad and instill them in my children. But there's things that I'm just like, I don't want you to respect me out of fear. I want you to respect me because I'm there for you. But I also want you to trust me when you come to me and you've made a mistake, and you can lay it on the table and say, this is how I screwed up.
Right.
Well, let's get through this. You know?
I think from the child's standpoint, and this is, I'm going to say that my dad did this because he was oh so wise and knew all the answers and knew how to go about this. Because unfortunately, you've got to live like some things you just have to experience. You've got to learn. Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Right.
Like you've got to learn boundaries and stuff like that. And I don't think my dad realized this was going to happen. I don't think he planned it. If you ask him, I'm sure he did. It was all set in motion.
Right.
And to fool my adolescent brain. But I remember it was dark. I want to say I might have been 5, 6 years old. Maybe a little older than that, maybe 7. And he had picked us up from my uncle's house. My uncle was watching us at the time, and I think he got in from work. I remember hopping in his old pickup truck, and growing up, there was 4 of us for a majority of my childhood. Four boys is what my parents had, and anytime you went somewhere, whether it be church or to a friend's house, they'd stop by a gas station, and my dad would get 2 canned Cokes, and you'd split them. So two of us would share one, the other 2 would share the other one. And that was always a point of contention. Like, you don't really want to share, but also at the same time, we knew we were poor. And so you didn't say anything. You just went with it. And I remember one day, or one night, hopped in the truck. He had pulled over to get gas. I'm sure it was 25 cents a gallon because, whatever. I don't really know what the price of gas was at the time.
Right.
It was the early 90s. And I remember while he's pumping gas, I looked in the cup holder. And I saw the little short glass Coca-Cola bottle that would come. It was a short glass bottle that was real stubby and had a little white cap on it. So I'm like, I knew that was Coke. And it was late at night, so my mom would have been throwing a fit because you don't get sugar late at night or whatever. No, I don't think she's ever actually said that. But anyway, while my dad was pumping gas, I'm like, now's my time to take a sip of his Coke, before he finds out. So I didn't ask, hey, Dad, can I have a sip of Coke or anything like that. I just opened it up, took a swig. And immediately I knew where I messed up, all right? Because there's so much that is wrong with this that I'm sure the statute of limitations for Child Protective Services is way past.
Right.
My dad dipped
I knew that's where
and,
it was
yeah,
going.
he would do skull wintergreen is what he would have, and he would spit it, in whatever bottle.
And
he
you
had
did
at the
that
time.
little kid greedy drink, didn't you?
Oh yeah, big. I'm talking about I swigged it, and just bottoms upped it, and it was one of the things, the life lessons that were learned at that moment was not even just a don't dip,
Right. Now you need a Coke to
it,
wash
it, it
that
was
out.
it was like well, the issue is you still don't want to get in trouble,
Right.
and so you got to try to find a way to save face. And just I remember feeling so sick and just miserable, but I'm not telling him nothing. And so I
Right.
put it back, and didn't say nothing. But it was, it was one of the things where, hey, if it's not yours, leave it alone type
Right,
thing.
right.
And sometimes a little questioning goes a long way. But it was, I remember just. I laugh at it now, but it's one of the things where that could easily be my dad let me dip his skull spit or whatever, and as disgusting as it is, that would be a childhood trauma.
Right.
That somebody would put me on a leather couch and spend $14,000 trying to uncover, and all it is it was just something that happened.
Right.
I
Just
can't
being a
get
dumb
mad at
kid.
him for it was his truck, his cup holder. I didn't ask for permission or whatever.
Right.
And so it's one of the things where it just, sometimes life is nasty things happen. Bad
Right.
things happen, and I want to teach that to my kid, but I'm going to try to find a way to go about it with, I don't dip, so I don't want him drinking spit, so I'm going to try to find a different way to go about it. But when you try to draw from your parents,
Right.
how they raised you. You try to see, what you want to apply, what you don't, things that you want to prevent from happening, for them, because you want them to also have their own stories.
Yeah.
There's certain things he's going to have to learn. Like I'm only going to tell you, I don't know how many times I got to tell you, hey, stop riding that scooter through here before you fall and you skin your knee, and you're going to have to learn that lesson the hard way.
Yep.
Um,
I remember my dad had two sayings, and to this day I refuse to say them, like, because you try not to sound like your parents. And my son, he tests my patience, and we've gone over this before. I say things to that child I never thought I'd ever say to anyone in my life. But growing up, my dad's two catchphrases were, if you needed anything, regardless of what it was, whether it was like $5 for a stick of gum, or not that it cost that much back then, or like a notebook for school.
right.
He would look you dead in the eye or yell from the couch, well, you better get you a job. I hated that with a passion.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one was, if you're trying to spell something or you're trying to write something for school, and you'd be like, hey, Dad, how do you spell this? Love my dad, not a strong speller.
Mm-hmm.
He would go, use the dictionary. If I could spell it, I wouldn't need the dictionary.
Right.
So it's not going to help me.
Right. I need to know how to spell it to find
Right.
it in the dictionary.
And I love my dad to death, and he's a very smart man in certain aspects of life. But I remember one time going, he yelled out that I needed to go get a job, and I said, Dad, do you not know any other words? And he goes, yeah, you could go get some WORC. And I immediately, like, I know I had a shitting grin on my face. He goes, work. You can go to work. And I was like, yeah, you messed that up. You messed that up. I'm gonna let you have it. I'm not
right.
gonna get you on that one.
My dad's was always the and I don't understand it to this day, because we were phenomenal children. Never we listened all the time. Never caused any issues. Didn't fight amongst ourselves. Like, so I don't understand why he felt the need to whip us with belts. But he would resort to that. And it was the early '90s. That's what you did with your kids, which is why we're a little bit different than the kids now, because we've towed a butt whooping or two. And so I remember every time that I got a whipping for being the best child in the world. As we're sitting there crying, and because there was always, you had the speech, and then you had the whipping,
Right.
and you knew the whipping was coming. There's no getting out of it. It's certain things have been set in motion that cannot be undone. And so as he's giving his speech, like, you're trying your best to get out of it, right? And so it's the Puss in Boots eyes, for lack of a better term.
Right,
The
right,
big,
right.
big eyes. And I remember his thing was stop looking at me with that face. Well, first off, you gave me this face.
Right,
I can't just
It's a
swipe
mirror.
it. It's
Right.
if you don't like it, maybe you should have thought about that
Right.
before you gave it to me. And so it was always one of them things where we laugh about it now. But my dad was, he would not. He would use a belt, to whip us, and I don't have an issue with that. I'm not going to be like, oh, my dad beat me. Well, I kind of deserved it,
Every one of them.
And
then some.
Maybe not everyone. Okay, so it's anyway.
Maybe not the Doughboy story, but
maybe not everyone, but I will give him this. I may not have deserved every whipping in my brain. I may not have deserved every whipping I got, but I definitely didn't get every whipping I deserved.
Right.
So
and he did every one of them with good intention.
Yeah. Like it was one of those where I definitely got by and dodged a couple.
Right.
But I don't have an issue with whipping, but with my son, we're trying to take a different approach where, hey, if I've got to, I will, but I want to try other avenues first.
Right.
And it's not me, bad mouthing, how my parents raised me. It's just me trying to take a different approach.
Right.
And I think that's being lost in society where it's not that your parents aren't bad for how, or again, so, if it's, hey, you made a B and they take a leather belt where you can't walk for 6 days, it's a different story.
Right. We're not advocating abuse.
But, when the kid's a shithead, you have to teach them, because if me as a parent doesn't teach them, then the court system is going to teach them, and
Exactly.
I don't want to go that route. And but transitioning that further down the line is I'm trying to be a better dad for my kid than my dad was for me, and it's not trash talking my dad. It's just trying to be better.
Right, society's evolved, and we found better ways.
And so
to
it's
do
trying to be a better dad than what he was, and I think that's a good mindset to have. But it also brings up, as you start trying to plan your kid's life for him,
Right.
is it brings up fears and apprehensions that you have. And I think, one of the things that we have with our line of work is we see the nastiness of the world
Right.
day in and day out. And so we go to the extreme of what we don't want our parent or our kids to go through.
Right.
But trying to rein that in just a little bit is, one of the fears that I have for my son is that, despite, me raising him, as best I can and trying to be a comfort for him or a sanctuary, is what if he takes and goes down that road of drug addiction or
Right.
something like that, where despite no matter what I've done, he still goes down that road. And that's something that, I don't know that you can actually combat that. I don't know that you can prevent that from happening because you can't keep them in a bubble their whole life.
Right. Well, I think that goes back to the building the strong character for your child.
Right.
And like we're saying, our parents had shortcomings to no fault of their own, and we're trying to combat those shortcomings, which gives me a fear of
Right.
what am I taking
What
away?
am I missing now?
Right. That I got that he's not going to get
Mm-hmm.
because I'm trying to find another balance or another solution, and it's difficult for me because, like, okay, I don't borrow money.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing for me. It's a huge part of contention for my life to have to ask for help, and anybody that's ever loaned me $1 has known that I've never outright asked for $1. Like, it's just not something I can do, and it stems from my dad. And I think I've told you the story about I was home from Iraq, and I'd had a truck. I'd left it with him. I'd gone out the night before with my kid brother, and I'm coming home, get to the house, realize, oh shit, next day I had enough gas to get to the gas station, but the bank was like another 3 miles down the road, and it was one of those like little gas light comes on and you got 50 miles type thing. It was
Right.
before all of that. When that gas light came on, you might want to get to the gas station right now. So I told my dad, I was like, hey, can you spot me $10? I'm coming home from Iraq. I've got money in the bank. Like, can you spot me $10? I messed up, forgot to get gas last night. I'm gonna get gas, go to the bank, fill up the rest of the way, and I'll bring you $20 back. And my dad was like, no, you should have done better. You should have planned better. And I was like, okay, got it. I drive to the gas station. I park my truck.
Thanks, you jerk.
Yeah, right. So I park the truck. I go in. I tell the guy, hey, I'll be right back. Got to walk to the bank. Go to the bank, get my money. And as I'm walking back from the bank to the gas station, I see my dad drive by. Honk. Wave at me. Smile. And keep going. Not even like pull over to give me a ride or nothing. Just keep going. And I was like, this mother. So now I'm angry. And I'm still young. I'm probably like 20 at the time, and I'm walking with a purpose back to my truck. Cause boy, when I get home, I'm gonna let this man have an earful. I'm a grown man now, who doesn't pre-plan and fill his truck up with gas, which we'll get to that. But get to the gas station, fill the truck up, get home, and I'm hot. I come through that door hot. I'm like, what the hell, old man? And he's like, what? And I'm like, you passed me. He goes, you saw me. You honked. And waved.
So you heard me.
Yeah. And he's like, wasn't sure if you knew it was me. I was like, yeah, no. I knew it was you. Where'd you go, Dad? He goes, I had to go to the bank. Your sister needed to borrow $40. And I was like, you're shitting me. Like, you're never going to see that again. I was going to bring you back $20 for loaning me 10. He goes, nope, didn't earn it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I could have gave you 10. He's like, nah, you need to learn a lesson. You gotta fill your truck up before you get home. And to his credit, I took from that, number one, make sure you take care of yourself and fill your truck up with gas so that you don't have to walk to the bank because your dad's an asshole and he's going to honk and wave at you. But two, you got to be self-reliant. And so for me, I'm trying to make sure that in my son, he has that accountability, but at the same time, he knows if life hits that hard, I don't want him to feel like he can't ask for help.
Right.
And so like I always tell him you got to try it on your own first and then ask for help. And that's the goal that I'm trying to impress on him.
Right.
Is I'm going to tell you what you need to do. Go do it, like cleaning your room. And when you get halfway through it, if you realize this is too big for me to handle, then come ask for help. But don't come to me if you're not going to attempt it first. Right. Like I'm not raising that kid.
Well, it's also you gotta prepare them because the world's a mean, nasty place.
Oh yeah.
It'll absolutely chew you up and spit you out, and so you've got to while they're at home, let them struggle a little bit. And like right now we're running into the issue. My son's learning how to read. And it's so easy to you just want to tell them what the word is and move on versus going through the come on, put it together
right
and but you also got to remember you struggled with it when you were a kid and so like I keep having to tell him, hey, this is a hard thing to do. Reading's not hard once you know it. It's like riding a bike. It's not hard once you know it. But you've got to get those those beginning blocks down. And
the worst part about that is when they actually get it. And then you don't realize because you're so used to them sitting next to you while you play on your phone or read your text messages or whatever. My son wasn't as bad, but he'd be like, Daddy, what's that girl saying? I'm like, mind your business. What is wrong? He's like, I can read now. I'm like, well, I wish you'd stop. Like, and now Jo, she's learning to read. And so she's my little cuddler. Like, shit talking cuddler. That's the best way to describe that little girl because she could be snuggled up with me, just being as sweet as can be,
and be mean,
just cutthroat. And so like I'll get a message and she'll be like, "That guy sounds mean." I'm like, first off, you can't read that well, and I'm like, yeah, it's just Uncle Mike. Mind your business.
Right.
And she's like, "Oh, Mikey." Like she knows you don't like to be called Mikey, but that's her thing. She's like,
it is what it is.
Yeah, she's there to push that button.
But it brings it down where you start looking at how their independence is going to go, and I've got a lot of friends who have kids who are older than mine, and so I get to sit back and watch as like one of them he just sent his oldest son to college, and so he's navigating that where he's like he's off on his own. I don't know what he's going to do, and I try not to throw up a bunch of curveballs, because they are legit concerned. And I try not to be like, well, he might be, off, doing whatever. And I don't do that to him, but my brain goes there where it's like, all right. So when it's my son's time to go to college, what's it going to be? But also, I look at when he goes to get married. Like obviously, marriage now is not like it was back in the 50s.
Right.
Where it was, hey, you get married, you stay married, and not a divorce thing. But I don't want some woman to take advantage of my son. Like I'm planning on having a conversation with him, saying, hey, look, don't just go for the pretty girl. Go for the girl. By all means, she can be pretty,
Right.
and that's a plus. But go for the girl who's bringing something to the relationship, not just a pretty
Goal-oriented.
smile.
Right.
Because a pretty smile with a bad attitude can make your life miserable.
Right.
And so like I'm planning on having that conversation with him, because I don't want him to take and go through like what a lot of our friends would go through, where they get in a 10-year relationship with this woman, and she decides to leave him and takes half of everything he's got in retirement and everything.
Right. She don't work
And so
for none
now
of
he's
it.
50 or 60 years old, and he's starting from the halfway point again.
Right. Right.
And so I don't want that for my son. But at the same time, if my dad would have told me, hey, don't go for the pretty girl, I'm like, shut up, Dad. And so it's like, how do you go about that?
Right.
And so there's a lot of apprehension as a father, and so it makes it when they don't listen to you, it makes you want to be kind of overcorrect them a little bit.
Right. Right. Snatch them up.
And so it's there's a delicate balance, and I don't like saying it, but I don't think I've found that balance yet.
No, I have not. And I agree with you 110%, because not only do I fear, so like in my own relationships, I fear the overbearing woman. Not I say fear, but I avoid them, because that's how my mom was. She was, my mom's passed away, and I'm not throwing shade. My mom was a bitch. There's just it is what it is. Now, she wasn't always. She had her moments, and she could be very sweet and very caring, but I draw away from the woman that steps into my life and is trying to control and tell me what I'm going to do, what I'm not going to do. Because in my brain, I'm like, I watched my dad, and he was miserable. He stayed with my mom for us. And that's why I got divorced when I did,
Right.
because I refused to be in a miserable relationship. It sets a bad precedent for my children. And I want them to know, and that's a lot of people ask me when I filed for my divorce and I was getting out of that, why I would still go pay her bills, or like make sure she still had power, make sure she still had gas. I kept a spare key to her car because she's an idiot and always locked her keys in the car. Or why, when she was drunk, I would offer to go pick her up and bring her back
Right.
and let her sleep on the couch. Or, all the little things that I would do up until the day that the divorce was finalized. And even still, there's an extent that I would go to help her. Now, it dwindles as time goes on, as she continues down the road that she goes down. But it's because at one point I made a commitment that I would take care of her as a spouse. Just because she didn't live up to that, I don't want my daughter to look for a man who, if things go south, he bails completely.
Right.
Now, she's by herself raising a child. And I want my son to understand that when you make a commitment, and that commitment comes with responsibilities being your children, you got to be there.
Right.
And even though you're paying her electric bill or her water bill one month, you're not doing it for her, because I could care less if she has electricity. I could care less if she can wash her ass. I want to make sure my kids have electricity, and I want to make sure they have water, even if I've got to pay it at my house and her house.
Right.
and whatever. It's not the financial aspect of it for me. It's the responsibility to my children, because at the same time they're seeing mom struggle, which I don't want them to see that. They're seeing dad show up regardless of how he feels. They both know that mom and dad don't like each other. Like, we don't. It is what it is. But they know that mom got a flat tire.
Right.
Dad showed up with a flat jack. Dad changed her tire. Dad made sure she got home. Mom doesn't feel good, which they were too young to understand. She's drunk. Daddy showed up. Daddy gave her a ride home. Daddy put her on the couch and made sure that she was okay through the night. Because at the end of the day, I don't want them to lose their mom.
Well, I know one thing that I do is I'm trying to teach my son how the proper way to treat a woman, if that makes sense.
Right, right,
And so, like,
110%.
and we're not doing, we haven't had the birds and bees talk or any of that other
Right,
stuff
well,
yet.
he's 6.
But right, so he's way too young for that, in my opinion. And
we've definitely had to stay out of my daughter's room.
Well, and so what I do is like we'll go to the grocery store and getting stuff for dinner or whatever, and my wife's at work, and so I tell him, hey, you want to get Mama some flowers,
Right, right.
and so he gets so excited, and I want him to learn that hey, you know you can be nice without it being a holiday type thing or whatever,
Right.
But I'm trying to, because I know that he watches everything I do, and so I try to teach him. I'm trying to teach him the way that you treat that he
Right.
needs to treat his wife or something like that, and so that hopefully in the future he'll be able to draw from that, and so that leads into like sometimes he'll hear us having arguments, because we were going to argue just like everybody else. Our marriage isn't perfect, even though I am, and so he'll hear us having arguments, and then we'll explain it to him.
Right, right.
And then also my wife has started this thing, and I'm sure I gave her the idea, and she's just taking credit for it. And by that I mean I've never heard of this before in my life, but she implemented this thing because it was always, I remember growing up like it was, and again not throwing shade to my parents, but it was you didn't have an opinion as a kid.
Right,
You
right.
you had orders, or you had instructions on what to go do, and if you didn't like it, oh well, you're going to go do what we told you to do, and so that honestly it bore into later, as I was growing up, like I didn't want to discuss, didn't want to talk to people or whatever. Like I was
Right.
very shy and everything else like that. That ability to communicate was kind of squashed a little bit, and so we're trying with him to keep his confidence and stuff like that,
Right.
and not be overbearing, but also at the same time, hey, I'm the parent. You're going to do what I tell you to do, and so she implemented what she calls no matter talks, and she'll tell him, hey, do we need to have a no matter discussion or talk or whatever, and it's no matter what you say during this period of time, you're not going to get in trouble for it. Let us know what you think. We'll talk to you as if you're an adult, and I will give my wife that is, not once did we ever take and treat him like a child. All right.
Right, right.
Because she saw somebody else do it, and she really liked how that young boy was raised, or how he acted. Because it was always like talking to a little gentleman. And so like we never did the baby talk. We never
Yep.
did any stuff like that. Like we would talk. I talked to him in a normal voice, and so like we'll have a no matter talk, and let him just he's mad because he's getting frustrated because he can't read and he thinks we're getting mad at him. Well, no, we're not getting mad at you. We literally just read this word 3 words ago, and now you're adding letters that aren't even there. Your letters.
Right, right.
And so it's like developing that ability for him to be able to communicate. And so, but it also, and then the paranoid side of you circles back around where, okay, if I'm focusing on this, what am I missing somewhere else that my parents
Right.
were a success with me on? And so it just brings up a bunch of not animosity, anxiety towards how you're raising your kids and what type of world they're going to go into.
Right. And I think one of the big struggles as a parent is that outside judgment, because like for me, I have always talked to my children like they were adults. I don't talk to them like they're kids. And I know that's something you and I agree on. It even as babies, I will talk to you like you're a grown person,
Right.
because I want you to have intellectual conversations. And it's one of the things that I get a lot of kudos on from teachers, is how intellectually developed my children are verbally, and how they communicate, and they're very direct with their needs, or how they're feeling or what they want. But I also take it to a whole nother side, because in my house, boogers are a big thing. It's my son
Don't
didn't
eat your boogers.
Right, don't eat your boogers. That's code for I love you, because he thought it was more embarrassing to be told I love you when he was getting out of the car at carpool. So now we yell, don't eat your boogers, and it makes me laugh, because like his mom and his Mimi, they think it's disgusting, and we shouldn't talk about boogers. That's not appropriate conversation or whatever. But I'm dad, and one of the things I've always had a firm belief in is that daddies have a different relationship with their children,
Right.
than anybody else in the world can have. For example, my daughter's name is Jocelyn. Everyone calls her Josie or Joe. I call her Joey. One, because I think it's the name of a baby kangaroo, and she's always just a hoppy, little girl. She's always jumping around, going 100 miles an hour like a little baby kangaroo. And when I tell you, her mom's side of the family, they hate it. And if you ever have anybody else call my daughter Joey, she gets mad. She's like, don't call me Joey. That's Daddy's name.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call me Joey. And we form these bonds with our children that fathers and their kids, if you're not in that loop, you don't get it. And it's something that dads, we have two roles stereotypically for our children: disciplinarian and fun.
Right.
And we don't get that, emotional side of it because society thinks, oh, that's a mother's job. Well, you start breaking down, what about those houses that don't have moms, or those houses that don't have dads?
You hear about, and that's, I think society has done a disservice to dads because it's, there's nothing stronger than an unconditional mother's love or whatever.
Right.
Well, what about the dad?
Right.
It's no weaker.
I'm expected to drop bodies and take bullets when shit hits the fan, but I can't have unconditional love for my child.
Right. Or the dad who, he's going to spending 4 days away driving a truck dealing with traffic. Think about that for a minute.
Right.
You got the over the road drivers, the truck drivers, and we're like, oh, they're making good money because they're truckers. They're in traffic. You want to see me at my maddest?
Right.
Is when I'm stuck in traffic and I can't get where I've got to go.
Right.
And my job's not depending on it.
Right.
I just want to be out of traffic. They do it day in and day out.
Or the oil field guys that are gone
Right.
2 weeks out of the, gone 2 weeks, home a week. And, I remember when my daddy was a long haul trucker, he was gone for 3 weeks to 4 weeks and come home for 3 to 4 days.
Right. And turn around and be right back.
And be right back out there. And don't get me wrong, like raising 4 kids, that was a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm.
And we barely got by. We were paycheck to paycheck. And we knew that as kids. And Dad would spend, we usually didn't get him for Thanksgiving. If we did, it was just the day. Because he would take November and December to bust his ass. So Christmas was amazing.
Right.
And that was his holiday, was Christmas. And he was disgruntled, but he was there for Christmas. And I'll never forget, because my dad was not the sit down and play with you dad. That wasn't him. He was business, always business. And I will forever hold the memory of my train set. I don't like trains. I've never been a train person. Whatever reason, this one Christmas, I wanted a train set. And my dad got in on Christmas Eve. We didn't even know he was there. Mm-hmm. He got in. He picked Mom up. We're all asleep. My older brothers, all they knew was Mom was going out. They didn't know what was up. And my mom's not a go-out. She wasn't the bar lady. She wasn't none of that. She was a stay-at-home mom. Her and my dad went to the mall in Colorado, because that's where we were at that year. They go to the mall, and my mom would tell me the story. She said the minute they walked through the door of the mall on Christmas Eve, my dad, who is, in my eyes, 6'9" and 375 pounds, a brick man.
Twisted steel and sex appeal.
Yeah, right. Dropped to his knees to my 5'2" mom, wrapped around her knees with both of these gorilla arms, and just top of his lungs, please, Mommy, can we go to the toy store? And now, you've got to, the height difference of my parents, okay? And here's this massive man just dropping to his knees, screaming at the top of his lungs, please, Mommy, can we go to the toy store? My mother's not a woman that gets embarrassed. Mm-hmm. She was not the good luck trying to embarrass my mom.
I think that one did it.
Oh, yeah. She said she was bright red, and then my father picked her up and carried her to the toy store, and she screaming, put me down the whole way, just to buy me the toy train. All right. And this was not a cheap train. I know for a fact. This was like one of those steel, not die cast, like metal trains. And stopped at Home Depot, got me a 4x8 sheet of plywood, cut a hole in the middle of it so that we could stand in the center and play with the train. He sat with me for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours with this thing. And it's a memory that sticks out with me. And it's why now, like for Christmas, with my kids, it's like I go 110%. I want them to hold that magic. I want them to be excited about Christmas. And I understand you see the Facebook posts about get your kid a book and this and that, and
nobody wants a book on Christmas.
Right. Or clothes or pajamas. But I do understand the concept that they're saying, hey, if you get your kid an expensive gift, tell them it's from you, not from Santa. And I understand that because there are some underprivileged kids who don't get those things for Christmas. I get that. I'm not going to lie to
The
you,
mean
though.
side of me wants to be like, it's because Santa doesn't like them as much.
Right. But I get where they're coming from. But growing up poor, my mom wrapped 500 something Legos individually, bought a box, a tub, and wrapped the Legos individually just so it looked like I got more presents for Christmas because we were broke. Like that was 1 year what she went and did. And so like for me, as a dad, my fear is not giving my children enough of those core memories to carry on to their kids, and trying to find that balance. That's where I find my weakness is trying to find the balance between giving them the map for when you've got to be tough and when you've got to dial back and be human.
I think we also have to accept the fact that they're going. I think it's the search for independence, or they're striving for independence.
Right.
I remember I didn't have a rough childhood. Like, we grew up poor, but
it wasn't rough.
My dad didn't beat us. My mom, she wasn't neglectful. Now, you skint your knees or whatever. Like, she was not coming off the porch. It was, hey, come here. Like, I just fell and cut my knee wide open. You want me to walk to you? Okay. And, well, you walked over here, so you're good. I'm like, so, there's 4 gallons of blood from that bite to over here, and but anyway, it was one of those things where I remember growing up, and I counted down. Like, I was 14 years old. I got 4 more years, and then I'm out of here.
Right.
I'll show you or whatever. And I think I've got to resign myself that my son is going to do the same thing.
Right.
Because it's the idea that, I know I can do better. And in some cases, he will. He will have areas. I will give him areas to improve on. Not on purpose, but because I can't be perfect. Same way my dad wasn't perfect. My grandpa wasn't perfect for my dad. And so that goes down. But also, none of us are. And so I've got to resign myself that he is going to have something where he's like, ooh, 4 more years and I'm out. I'm going to show you, Dad. And so I'll hear him in his bedroom throwing a fit over the other day. I think he wanted to eat some grapes, but it was past bedtime. All it was he was tired and wanted to stay awake, and that was his way. He'd already eaten dinner, eaten a snack, and everything else. So we're not, he's not, malnourished or anything like that. But he wanted some grapes, and I was like, no, it's time for bed. You got to get ready for school, or got to get some sleep before school. And I remember I'm standing in the hallway, and I had to keep myself from walking in there, like, listen here, and I'm just listening to him. I want some grapes, and he's like slapping, throwing his fist down on his pillow or whatever, and I peek my head around the corner. He doesn't see me, and he's just sitting there, he raises his arms up, and Donkey Kong smashing his arms onto his pillow. Just want some grapes, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, that's probably going to be the traumatic experience.
Right.
That's going to put him on a leather couch and be like, my dad hated me and all this other stuff. And to be fair, my wife told him he couldn't have grapes. So maybe he'll blame her, not me.
The fridge is full of grapes.
Right. And so it's one of them things where I've got to resign myself that there's going to be something he's not going to like. And that he's going to complain about or whatever, and that's the nature of the beast.
It is.
But also at the same time, in the same way that we're looking back and seeing where, hey, our parents might have struggled in this area, but there's also I don't want to say silver lining, but there's you see the building aspect of it.
You wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for whatever it is your parents did or didn't do for you.
Right.
And so,
I think too many times we take and we. A lot of people want to just whine about it, because I saw a Facebook post the other day where they were talking about, hey, what's something you don't like about your parents or whatever. And man, when I tell you, they reamed their parents.
Roasted them.
It's, I'm sitting here in therapy on this and that, and some of it deserves it, but at the same time, like, you're past that. Like, let's stop.
You identify the problem, move on,
and try to be better rather than giving it a foothold. And so if you're up for it, what I'd like to do is throw this out to the listeners is send us an email, coffeeandthebull@yahoo.com. Send us an email. Let us know how you think you're doing better than your parents at raising your kids. Because this is a big topic. We're definitely going to be hitting this more later on in future episodes. But let us know what your thoughts are. Is there something you don't like? If you think my dad abused me, by all means, send that in an email. Let's have an open discussion.
Right.
We're not necessarily going to loud cap you or anything like that. We want that discussion. Because
I'll tell you right now, I'm beating my mom.
What?
Yeah. Like, as far as, like, doing better.
I was going to say,
I'm still
she's
here.
dead. You can't.
No, I'm winning.
You can't, dig her up and okay. So it's one of the things where,
the room off guard.
send us an email. Let us know, if what your parenting process is. If you don't believe in whipping your kids, or you take a different approach, or why we're wrong or why we're right. Let's have that open discussion. Send us an email again, coffeeandthebull@yahoo.com. For the listeners who you're like, hey guys, y'all are doing great. Go to Facebook, hit that hit the follow button. Go to YouTube, hit that subscribe button for us. If you don't have a YouTube account, stop being lazy, open an account, and hit that subscribe button for us. All right.
Spotify or TikTok. We've
got both of those up and running.
Yeah,
now.
Spotify is good to go. We're still learning the TikTok a little bit. We were debating on Instagram. Still in the works on that because I have no idea what I'm doing on
He's
Instagram.
old.
That's what it is from the guy who doesn't do any social media. But we don't have all the answers. This is just Mike and John's point of view on parenting and how these are affecting men. And again, we're not directed towards men. We're just kind of shining a light on our thoughts from just two average guys. So if it helps, it helps. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And we are open to whatever you guys are wanting to suggest or wanting to email, or even if it's you guys suck, we'll take that.
Right.
So like, follow, subscribe, and share. The email, again, if you haven't gotten it down already, is coffeeandthebull@yahoo.com. And we hope to see you guys in the next one.
Yep. And just remember, 1, 2, toodaloo.
Holy shit. So stupid.